everyone, and good afternoon. We are here to update you on the latest from the Big Brother Canada 11 house. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and with me today to talk about the new HOH and their plans for the nominations, it's Pooya. How you doing?
I'm doing good. They gave us 90 minutes. That was perfect for my morning coffee, and I'm excited to get into it because potentially a little nice on the crumbs today. Decent crumb action. So I'll take it. It was good.
We will see. So, of course, last night we saw that Rob was the second person evicted from the Big Brother Canada 11 house. They then competed in an HOH. Before we get to that, they did also drop some diary room segments. And by diary room segments, we mean, honestly, kind of like what they did with OTT, if you were around back then. They had each player come into the diary room and answer 4 questions. Who do you think is working with who? Who do you trust the most? Who do you trust the least? And what is your worst case scenario for next week? That last question was not really specific enough because a lot of them were like, well, worst case scenario is I'm on the block.
Yeah.
Great. Didn't realize that. I guess hope might be the only exception to that one. But I do want to quickly go through what we learned from the diary room sessions because they are perhaps the most insightful thing we have gotten all season long. And they're also very confusing. And these players don't make a lick of sense at times. So let's run through that. We will talk about the HOH and then we'll see what this week has in store for us here. The first diary room was Rob, at least that I saw. And he is now gone. I don't know exactly when they did these. It wouldn't surprise me if it was Thursday, as in yesterday, or maybe the day before. But Rob says that he sees Zach, Ty, and Dan working together with Claudia and Shania. He thinks that basically that's kind of like a 5. He says he's working with Jonathan, Hope, Santina, Vanessa, Kuzi, Daniel, and he hopes Anika, which means he hopes he's safe this week. Obviously, Kuzi, Daniel, and Anika did not come through for him there. He trusts Jonathan the most, Zach the least, and obviously wouldn't want Zach or Ty winning. All pretty much what you'd expect from Rob.
Absolutely standard stuff here. Yeah, given that he also went out, everything that he had put in basically came out the way he did, except for the middle alliance that did not ride with him there. So,
yeah. Santina came into the diary room. And they asked Santina, who do you think is working with who? And she goes, oh, man, you know what? I don't know. I'm going to skip that question.
Go ahead, Santina. Give us nothing. You're giving us nothing, Santina.
Like, if
you were the HOH week 1. How do you not know anything?
If somebody said that to me in the game, I'd think that they were just intentionally hiding what they thought. But This is the diary room, Santina. Stop trying to hide your thoughts. What are we doing? She says she trusts Ty the most and Anika. Ty and Anika, top 2 people she trusts in the game. Very surprising to me that she named Anika. A little bit surprising that she says Ty, considering that she doesn't trust Zach. She says she trusts Zach the least. So I don't know what she thinks she's doing in the game if she trusts Ty the most and Zach the least, but unfortunately, she will not be the only person to say that.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people are somehow able to separate the two when they're doing their assessment, which is a wild notion when you consider the fact that these two are in lockstep together.
Almost every single person, in fact, I think maybe every single person said the very first thing they said, who's working with who? Zach and Ty. Zach and Ty, Zach and Ty, Zach and Ty, Zach and Ty. I trust Ty, I don't trust Zach. How do you think this game works? Anyway.
Yeah.
Shania came in. She said Zach and Ty are working together with Dan. She says Rob was there, but that's changed. Hope too. She says there's a guys thing going on, and she's not sure if Santina is in there. She also sees that Kuzi, Anika, and Daniel are working together. She trusts Claudia the most and Dan. We know that there's a little bit of a flirtmance, at least on his end, perhaps, that might have been fake, but is now maybe real. And she says Daniel. as well. She says there's a new trust building with Daniel that's very new, but she's very excited about it. So Daniel has apparently kind of been getting to work building a relationship with Shania, worth noting. Shania says she trusts Ty the least. And worst case scenario, she's on the block next to Claudia or Kuzi. Wouldn't want to be on that block next to Claudia because she's her closest ally, next to Kuzi because she thinks she'd go home next to Kuzi. Ty says he's working with Zach. He says Rob and John are working together. He and Claudia are working together. He trusts Zach most, then Claudia, then Kuzi. Ty trusts Daniel and Anika the least. And he says worst case scenario is Rob stays and he has to defend Zach. So a little bit interesting there. Ty not trusting Daniel and Anika, but very much trusting Kuzi. Again, these people...
It's so fascinating to me to clock people that are working together, but then trusting one of them and then not trusting the other two is certainly interesting. But that's what is probably the most devastating thing to me is knowing and hearing like Shania vibes with Daniel and there's some development there. And you know, it's like people in these different pockets of alliances are trusting one person from the other side. Would love to know how much and what kind of information has led that bond to solidify. But I guess we'll never know.
Yeah. Here's the thing. If you trust somebody, they should be in an alliance with you and not on other alliances. If they're in other alliances, you should not trust them. You can use them. You can connect with them. You should not trust them because they have different priorities than you. Anyway, Zach comes in. Zach says the girls are working together. He says Daniel, Anika, and Kuzi have something. He says he and Ty have some things with some people. He says Jonathan, Rob, Santina, and Vanessa seem to have something. He's not sure where Santina stands in all of it. He trusts Ty the most. He also trusts Hope, and he trusts Daniel. He trusts Vanessa the least, and John or Vanessa winning HOH would be his worst case scenario, though he hopes to repair things with John if possible.
Yeah, that's about standard stuff for Zach, Darren. I'm interested. Zabo's name doesn't come up as people he trusts, but I think why do you need to trust someone that you feel like you can control? It doesn't matter. So,
yeah. Vanessa comes in. She says she sees Ty and Zach working together. She thinks Dan is with Renee and Shania, which is an interesting call from her. She has a slightly closer relationship with Dan than I think a lot of people in the house, and she sees him with Renee and Shania. That may actually be more accurate than you might think at first glance, given what Dan says when he comes in, but that's Vanessa's perspective. She says she trusts Jonathan the most, Zach the least. Worst case scenario, Zach winning HOH, pretty standard stuff. Jonathan comes in, and he gives about 10 seconds of answers and about 30 seconds of shout-outs. Who's working together? Ty and Zach. Who do you trust the most? Rob. Who do you trust the least? Zach. What's your worst case scenario? I'm public enemy number one. Anyway, shout out. Blah.
Yeah, he wasted no time and gave us all the answers we would have already known. If you had just watched the episodes, you could have figured out all of this on your own.
Yeah. Anika comes in. She says she sees Rob, Santina, Vanessa, and Jonathan all working together for this week only, meaning they kind of came together to save Rob. She sees Zach, Ty, and the girls working together. So she sees Zach, Ty, Claudia, Shania, Renee as kind of a 5, which surprised me because if you see Renee as one of them, then you'd be a lot more inclined to vote Renee out, I think, this week. But who knows? She says me, Daniel, and Kuzi are also pretending to work with Zach and Ty. She says she loves Ty, but he's working with both Zach and Santina, which is weird. So she's not sure where that stands. She says she trusts Daniel and Kuzi. She does not trust Renee, Rob, or Santina, or Zach, or Vanessa.
It's a good place to be, Anika. Doesn't trust half the house.
Santina listed Anika as one of her top trusted people.
Yep. Anika, listen, the girl said, I'm winging it going into this house. And my God, she's winging it in every sense of the word.
Yeah, she says, worst case scenario is I go on the block. And I think I would go on the block if Renee, Vanessa, or Santina won HOH. They would all come after me if I kick out Rob. So she thinks she's losing those relationships by voting Rob out. which again kind of confuses me as to why she ended up making that decision. But Anika's really confused me.
Yeah, I feel like Anika is confusing, and we shouldn't read too much into it lest we lose ourselves in trying to figure it out.
Yes. Kuzi said she sees Zach and Ty working together with Santina. She's also low-key working with them, but not really. She says Shania, Claudia, and Renee are working together. She has her own three, herself, Anika, and Daniel. And then she sees John, Rob, Vanessa, and Santina, again, are also kind of together. She trusts Ty the most and Zach the least. Worst case scenario is herself, Anika, or Daniel on the block. She's the reason she doesn't bring up Ty is because she's not worried about Ty. He can take himself off. So this was a little concerning. She trusts Ty the most. Now, Ty does trust Kuzi.
Yes.
But Ty is also a very self-interested player, as is Daniel, right? But like Daniel is very much tied to Kuzi. His fate is tied to her. He doesn't have a ton of other options. He's very much, I think, going to be working with her long term. Whereas Ty is very much like he's got plenty of options, clearly, and is a much more dangerous player and somebody that should be trusted, I think, considerably less than Daniel or even Anika. I think, Kuzi's playing a great game, but I think this is the most concerning thing I've heard from her is that she trusts Ty the most. We'll see if it has an impact on her game moving forward, especially in the short term.
Yeah, I feel like, Ty has, the one thing I will give him is that he's been able to masterfully somehow be associated with Zach, but get zero of the Zach blowback that Zach has been getting. Again, Ty's name is not in the bottom on anyone, but I think you mentioned Shania mentioned Ty as the least.
Yeah.
So that's a great spot to be in, given that your number two, or your number one rather, has legitimately tanked his own stock throughout the week. So having that protection and then having other people trust you as their number one as well, he's the more dangerous one of the two easily.
Ty's doing everything Gino should have done last season. Could you imagine Ty winning HOH and being like, well, I guess I have to take out Zach because that's what the house wants. You're no, this is what you do. Zach is not the danger in this house. Ty is the danger. And every week that Zach is there, Ty gets more and more powerful because he's more and more covered by the fact that Zach is the one running around and doing all of these things. So, yeah. Very valuable.
As long as Zach is there doing all that, he can, and he uses the time while Zach's in the house to strengthen these other bonds that he has. In the inevitability that Zach leaves, Ty will have plenty of places to land, no problem.
Yep. So Renee comes in. She says John, Rob, and Santina are together. She says Zach, Ty, Hope, and Dan are together. She says the girly pops will be together shortly. She trusts Hope the most. And then that night, Hope voted her out.
That was funny.
She trusts her girly pops, which are herself, Shania, and Claudia. She has, I said this about Shania. Shania said she trusted Daniel the most. This is actually Renee saying she has a new trust building with Daniel and herself. So Shania had mentioned Daniel as one of the people she trusted the most. Renee is also including Daniel. She says this is a very new thing. So Daniel's been working on Renee recently and already had Shania. A small correction there. I was like, why didn't I write that in my notes? It's because it wasn't that person. It was Slater. Renee says she trusts Santina, Vanessa, and Anika the least. And Vanessa winning HOH would be worst case scenario. This to me feels very reactionary from Renee. Obviously, Vanessa's, trying to keep Rob in the game, but I don't think that Vanessa is anti-Renee. I think that she is just pro-Rob. But I think Renee is very much, and we talked about this yesterday from what she was talking about, she's very much offended at the fact that Vanessa and Rob have been campaigning against her, so to speak, which they haven't even been. They've only been campaigning for Rob, but Ty is lying to her, I think, and telling her that they're campaigning against her.
Stoking the flames a little bit. And I mean, ultimately, when you're on the block, if someone's campaigning for the person next to you to go, you can very easily take it as, well, that means I have to leave. So that means you don't want me here. So that's not good for me. So I think the combination of those two things will definitely make you not look at the person well.
Yes. So Claudia says she interprets the question as who are you working with? She says she's working with Shania, Renee, and Ty. And then when she gets to the who do you trust most question, she's like, well, those people.
Yeah,
Because she's not a weirdo that trusts people she's not working with.
Yeah, she was the first person whose diary room I saw. So I was very confused when the next person had what I took as different questions because they were answering it the right way. It's like, Claudia, what are you doing here? Read the paper. It's not that long.
Of those, she trusts Ty and Shania the most. Renee is kind of like there, working with her.
Interesting.
She trusts Santina the least, and also Anika. So poor Anika, she's trusted by Santina, but doesn't trust Santina. And she seemingly every single one of the girls, Shania, Renee, and Claudia, listed Anika as somebody they trusted the least, which is also weird because they mentioned that Anika is somebody that they might bring into the girls just on Wednesday. So I don't know exactly when these diary rooms were again, but I don't know if something happened in between then. I think there was perhaps some back and forth about the vote that could have caused this after they talked about potentially bringing Anika in. And Anika herself again said they are going to not trust me once I vote Rob out. So it's possible that they figured out that she wasn't voting Rob, and then that caused them to not trust her as much. We will see. From her perspective, worst case scenarios being on the block. So
classic.
Yeah. Last few here. Dan comes in. He says, and Dan's is kind of interesting. Dan says Zach and Ty are together, and he says I'm with Zach. He says Daniel, Anika, and Kuzi are together. Shania, Renee, and Claudia are together, and Rob, Jonathan, and Santina are together. Not a terrible read on the house. No. He says, who do I trust the most? Well, a few days ago, I would have said I trusted Zach the most, but now I'm kind of losing trust. I'm kind of feeling like I was lied to. But at this point, I feel like I have to see it through. And then he says, okay, who do I trust the least? Okay. Is it bad if I want to say Zach? He also says, or Santina, because she's trying to play both sides, essentially. Worst case scenario is being on the block, and he thinks that Santina or Jonathan might do that. He hopes he can repair things with Jonathan. He hopes that Zach is a bigger target than him, which I can get why he would feel that way. But you have to realize that if you are the person being used by somebody, you are probably going to be the target over them. And that might not make sense to like your like immediate logic. But the reason is that the Zach players are the ones that are being more active and talking to people. And so if they use you, and you are, you're like Zach's guy, that doesn't make Zach the big mastermind target. That means you're the target because you're the one winning the comps. So that means you're dangerous, and they have a relationship with Zach and they don't have one with you. You are only going to do things for Zach and not for anybody else, which means you are the safest person to take off the board. Whereas Zach is connected all over and would either have people who want to look out for him or would be scared to come after him because of his connections, which makes you much more likely to be targeted. But Dan is hoping that that's not the case. But no.
Yeah, you're going to be expendable, especially when someone who's had a bigger, like you said, game so far, people are going to be scared for the fallout of putting Zach on the block and how much that could add stress to the house, even on like a very living with someone level. So they're never going to do that. They're going to go with the easy guy who's already proven to be on the block and be quiet about it week one. So don't love that for you, Dan. Don't love that at all.
Yeah. So Daniel comes in. He says he sees Kuzi working with Ty and Hope. He says he knows Kuzi's working with Ty and Hope, which is kind of news to me. I don't know if she's actually working with Hope, but maybe she was at one point. I'm not sure. He said the boys had a thing that's fumbling. He says Vanessa, Santina, John, and Rob are together as of right now. They were again campaigning in that vote. And this is kind of I think something that Big Brother players can fall into as well, where like sometimes you think that because you're working together for a vote or that other people working together for a vote will stay together. Mm-hmm. But once you remove that binding element, they can easily split apart. So that's something important to recognize. He sees himself, Kuzi, and Anika working together with Zach. He says Zach is with everybody. He says Renee, Shania, and Claudia are together. He says, again, you got Kuzi and Anika who can go in there. He says, myself and Anika have a final two, which I
Great
think is
final two choice.
very smart. For Daniel, obviously, you're gonna want to work with Kuzi. Are you gonna want to sit in final two with her? Probably not.
This is the very smart choice to pick out Anika. That's the right call for a final two.
Yeah. Finally, last one is Hope. Hope says, well, the girls are working together, obviously, and the guys are working together, obviously. He says he trusts Zach the most. Zach allows him to go rogue, and he appreciates that. He trusts Santina the least, and his worst case scenario is losing more of these comps, man.
I think I can safely say now this is week 3 we're about to embark on. Hope has been a huge disappointment to me. I genuinely thought in the preseason, I was like, Hope is the guy who I think will pick the game up as like a newbie that's going to pick the game up and run with it. And the man doesn't think beyond comps. It's just comps this, comps that, gotta win. We'll talk about the daily, but the only thing I remember Hope saying is, I just hope I get picked to play POV. I'm done with Hope. I'm sorry. Hope is hopeless. I have to, we talked about the adapt. He's not adapting. He's just there.
Yeah. Now, his statement about Zach allowing him to go rogue, I mean, the wording itself made it feel like Zach told him, go ahead and cast a rogue vote, like Zach would be in the know. Now, it's still very possible that that's true. However, in today's drop, we do see Zach acting like he doesn't know that Hope did it. So that could be a ploy or it could be real. You can judge for yourself based on what he says when we go over it. But either way, somehow, some way, Hope trusts Zach the most, promises Renee he'll vote for her, then votes to keep Rob, and nobody knew it was him. He didn't own up to the vote. So although some people suspect that it's him, obviously. So let's get into the drop here, because as we said, a 7-4 vote, including Hope and Vanessa, to keep Rob. Rob leaves, and Kuzi wins the HOH.
Taran, that's 3 for 3 that my draft team has not won an HOH.
Is that real? You have Zach, or sorry,
Santina, Dan, and
Kuzi.
Yeah. So doesn't mean anything, but it is funny to see. I mean, in the Survivor draft, not to talk too much about drafts here, but the 3 people that got swapped around were all on your team.
Right?
So it's wild.
All right. So Kuzi wins HOH. And so let's just, like, before anything, let's just quickly think this through, because my immediate reaction was like, okay, she didn't really need it. This was kind of like, if anything, the worst one so far for her to win, but still not bad. And it's usually an opportunity, especially in a spot like this. And I was just trying to think, okay, because the thing is that there are, a lot of people kind of pinned against each other right now, and you don't want to interfere with that and like step into the middle and become a side, right?
Right.
So I was trying to think like, who's the best, and then I quickly realized Dan. Dan is such a great target for Kuzi. For many reasons. 1, he's a big comp threat. 2, he's been working for Zach. 3, it doesn't piss anybody off. Even Zach can't complain too much, especially because even Ty had been pushing for that to happen. If these guys are going to keep taking shots at each other, and you can just be like, okay, Ty, I agree with you. Let's take out Dan, and then make this Ty's move that makes Ty get some blood on his hands, while also weakening both Zach and Ty. This is kind of a great play, right? So that was kind of my initial thought process. I don't know if you agree, Pooya.
Yeah, I was nervous when I saw that Kuzi had won right out the gate, but then the more I thought about it, then kind of watching the daily, kind of marinating on it throughout the day, I felt better. I felt better because I can see different avenues that she can go where She doesn't have too much on her moving forward, and I think she'll be fine. And I think it can further solidify the bond she's already been making. So I think this is a bit of a win-win for her. I think it can be a win-win for her, I should rather say. So yeah, I'm feeling optimistic.
Yes. So we started the drop with Vanessa, Ty, and Santina. And we jump right into the middle of an argument with them, particularly between Vanessa and Ty. And it becomes pretty clear they're talking about the vote. And it becomes clear a little bit later, because it was not clear until a little bit later, that one of the reasons why they're arguing is that Vanessa is full on hard denying, I did not vote to keep Rob. I was not one of those 4 votes. And there's not a single soul in the house that believes her.
We just went through the DRs. Most of them had this pocket of 4 together, and she is one of the names there. So if they're all so certain, even if they believed it was just for this like a temporary 1-week thing, they have no reason to think anyone else did this. And I have a feeling Vanessa, again, when we're talking about someone who's going to bat for Rob the whole way through, you can't pretend that you voted with the house at this point. I'm sorry. There's no point in you doing that. You got just be out about it, because it's going to make it worse for you. I think Vanessa's going to have a tough time harboring this lie. And this was uncomfy to watch. This is, we immediately go into a confrontation, and it's classic Ty arguing the way Ty does, which is probably the most infuriating way to be in an argument with someone. I can't stand this kind of like, I'm being chill and I don't really care. So it's like, I don't really.
What he was doing with the walking back and
forth? What was the hand thing? Yeah.
He's just like,
was that like reps?
It looked like he was doing some kind of exercise as he was arguing.
Yeah, it's like he wasn't paying attention, or he's just like pacing back and forth in front of her, every now and then throwing a hand up, throwing a second hand up. And again, when someone's in an argument with me and they are doing other stuff, they're not paying attention, like, eye to eye, it's frustrating. And then that tone, Taran, that gaslighty tone, I was just like, I'm like, how is Santina sitting there like this, just hanging out? I couldn't. I'd be gone. I don't care, game. It's too uncomfortable for me.
Yeah, it's difficult to come off as the like wrong party in an argument where somebody is like blatantly lying for no reason to you. Yeah. And yet Ty manages to do it.
He does.
So she's saying it can't be Daniel. He says, who could it be then? Anika? She says, I don't know. And don't say I accused anybody. Ty's like, you did say a name. And she said, listen, Rob proposed the idea. And he's like, well, you knew Dan, you knew how Dan wanted you to vote. So why were you entertaining other options? She's like, because I'm on the outs and I can entertain whatever options I want. Dan respects that. Why don't you? And he's like, well, do you even talk to any of those people more than you talk to me? She's like, yeah. It's like, name one. Koozie. Then why didn't you vote in alignment with her? She's like, I did. It's like, what do you mean? She voted Rob out. Exactly. But you voted Rob to stay. No, I didn't. I voted Rob out. Okay. She kind of like storms off for a second, and Ty and Santina are going to complain about like, she's lying. Obviously. She comes back. She's like, I'm just completely desensitized by this game. And Ty's like, listen, you just can't keep playing that card. Like, I'm the one that isolates you. And she's like, I'm not blaming anyone for it, but having a conversation like this is not fun. And this continues for a completely unnecessary amount of time as he continues to grill her about like the specifics and laugh at her every time she says something. And she's like, oh my God. He's like, yes, oh my God is how I feel talking to you, Vanessa.
And did you notice when people, because this was in the backyard area, did you notice when people started coming into the backyard, Ty got actively louder as if to like magnify that something was going on there? She's like, Ty, you are being performative. You know exactly what you're doing. Because he didn't need to raise his voice at that point. But I think he wanted other people to be put on notice that, hey, I'm actively talking to someone who's lying about their vote and they're arguing with me.
Yeah. So Koozie's going to talk to Jonathan in the meantime, up in the HOH room. She is the HOH. Koozie says, I voted Rob out because at the end of the day, he was just a much bigger threat. And him being gone means there's one less person in the game that I need to worry about. That's what decided it for me. Jonathan says he understands. He says he doesn't like how a certain person handled the week. And even now that person is trying to pull him back into things, which is what Zach said he was going to try to do. But he's having trouble trusting anyone right now, and he can't stand the guy. He says, I really like you, though, Kuzi, and that's not just blowing smoke. I see you as a strong woman, and I really respect you. She says she appreciates that. He says he's really happy she won the HOH because he knows she won't be swayed by anyone, and he wants her to know that if she ever wants to fight, he's behind her. He's ready to go to war. And she lets him know she definitely will not be putting him up.
I think that this is a perfect conversation for Jonathan to have as someone who was just literally going to war for someone on the block unapologetically. I think this gives Kuzi all the security she needs to know that John is good with her. But Taran, the Bel Air direct safety thing is looming right now. And if past seasons are any indicator, good old Jonathan from the Rock, that is Newfoundland, I think is going to receive the most votes and probably be safe regardless, which I think is a mistake. I think obviously if the public was going to vote strategically, this is not the time to give it to Jonathan, who then cannot get it the rest of the season. But knowing what's going to happen, I think Jonathan's about to be safe from that.
Yeah, Jonathan is almost definitely going to be safe anyway. It would be burning a safety on him when he might need it later. On top of that, it lowers the amount of trust that Kuzi can build with Jonathan by not putting him on the block. And on top of that, there is perhaps another person that might need to be safe in order to prevent Kuzi from potentially making a mistake, which we will talk about in just a moment.
Yes.
Yes, I think very important, for Kuzi to really work on Jonathan this week. I mean, as he says, this is a guy, if you win him over, he is yours. And this is a perfect opportunity to do so. Where again, I feel like going after Dan is a perfect way of making that happen, where you can be like, hey, I'm going to take Dan out for Rob. And like, let's do this, right? And he might be like, why not Zach or whatever. But I think there's plenty of like, well, Dan is a bigger comp threat. Well, so on and so forth. There's plenty of reasons you can give him. Like Zach, look, Zach's head is for you, there's plenty of ways you can make this happen. And so I would like to see Kuzi really work on John, because I really feel like he's so easy to pick up this week. And he'd be very valuable to have if you do pick him up, but we'll see.
He's the hottest free market the hottest free agent in the market right now. Genuinely. I think anyone
and Zach can't touch him.
Yeah. And again, he just lost his number one. He's looking for a number one. And I think that Kuzi could easily take that with one or two more conversations. I feel good about this. And I think this would be a duo to a force to be reckoned with. I would love that.
Mm-hmm. So Kuzi's going to talk to Vanessa and Hope. Vanessa says she just got grilled by Ty because he thinks I voted for Rob to stay, and I didn't. And Kuzi's just like, listen, I don't think it matters at this point. And Hope is like, thank you. That's what I'm saying.
Let's move on.
Vanessa says she's excited for Kuzi's HOH. And they start trying to figure out like how many more weeks in the game. If there's 50 days left, that means there's 7 more weeks. And Hope looks devastated when he hears that there's 7 more weeks left in the game.
He's barely holding on week 3. He's like, 7? That is a lot. Put me on the block.
Genuinely. He's just
put me
like,
on the block.
He's like, 7? All right. Jonathan and Ty are going to talk a bit, and this is where things get a little dangerous because, again, if you're Kuzi, you do not want Ty picking Jonathan up, which is not impossible considering the disconnect between Ty and Zach in the perception of the house. Jonathan says he knows who he'd like to be around, like Ty and Hope. Those are his guys. Ty asks if there's anyone he should look out for. Jonathan says, honestly, I haven't heard anybody say your name. Ty says, well, listen, I know you like Vanessa, but you need to be careful around her. She's no good for your game. She's bad news. I just had this talk with her, blah, blah, blah. Just stick with Claudia, your East Coast girl.
That'd be nice for Ty, wouldn't it? His flirt mans. Yeah, that's a great choice, Ty. I can see why you did that. No, and this conversation, if the initial argument wasn't an indicator of what Ty's going to be doing, Ty's MO is officially going to be, let's push Vanessa onto the block and get her out this week. And this is him starting to plant those seeds throughout the night.
Yeah. And then he continues to do it. He talks to Dan and Zach in the pantry. He's warning Dan about Vanessa. She's trouble. Dan is another person Vanessa has a connection to, so he's letting him know, like, hey, watch out for her. She's causing trouble, so on and so forth. Basically already prepping for the eviction vote that he anticipates, because he anticipates that he's going to be able to get Vanessa up on the block. Jonathan and Anika are going to talk briefly. She says she thinks he's good this week. You know, it's a fine talk, but it's short. Kuzi talks to Ty, and this is the most important conversation of the drop. She asks how Santina is doing, and Ty says, well, let me tell you, she's kind of happy that Rob's gone, because he was always on her hip. Like, we saw what was going on with that guy. Like, he just didn't know when to stop. Like, you've got to know your limits, bro. He was making Santina feel uncomfortable. She goes, you really believe that she was annoyed at Rob? You don't think she was like into it? He's like, yes, I believe it. Now she can play her own game and align with who she wants to. Okay.
Yeah. Ty, I feel like we all saw that hug right before Rob left. Stop it. Okay. Listen, from a game perspective, yes, she doesn't have to worry about Rob now, right? So that's aces. But don't be acting like, you know, there were not mutual feelings there. Because I definitely, that hug, the hands around the neck, I've seen that song and dance plenty. I know what that means.
Yeah, and she's like, and he's like, yeah, well, game wise. She's like, okay, this is genuinely, Santina's going to be selling this to Hope a little bit later, but you know, again, like, this is just her doing damage control, obviously.
Yeah.
And I will tell you as well, I talked to Rob this morning, I did ask him about Santina. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, I mean, in the TikTok exit interview, he said, "I'm just saying, so some of the decisions I made in the house were definitely because of her," which I took as the Shania story. But hey, we'll wait for the exit interview to find out more.
All right. So Ty explains to Kuzi the Vanessa situation that just went on. He says she's clearly working against the whole house. And Kuzi is like going along with this. She makes fun of Vanessa's pitch to get rid of Renee. She's like, it was such a bad pitch. And Kuzi says, my theory on the extra vote is that it's either Zach, or it's somebody who felt bad and threw him a vote, knowing it wouldn't be enough, but will probably never admit it. I think it could be Hope. And he's like, well, did you talk to Hope? And she's like, no. I mean, at this point, it doesn't matter anyway, so who cares? She says, I'll tell you this, though. It was definitely not Daniel or Anika. And she says, when I talked to Daniel, he said, if you think you can get me to flip, you're not going to. So she thinks he's taken a liking to Zach, and that he would not have flipped on Zach. And I think this is either a little bit true, and that because it seems like when I talked to Rob, he told me this. I'll give you this one. Rob said Kuzi promised, she swore she would vote to keep him, and that as late as like that happened on Wednesday, and even like right before the vote, she was like implying to him that she was working to try to keep him. So that to me implied that Kuzi was trying to convince Daniel and Anika, and that maybe this conversation really did happen where she went to Daniel and tried to convince him one more time before the vote, and he said no. And so she might be being real when she's like, I think he's taken a bit too much of a liking to Zach, or she might be saying this to help sort of ingratiate Daniel with Zach and Ty. Who knows? But she says that listen, Ty, I don't want it to seem like you're influencing my HOH this week. I want to be seen with the girls a lot, which is, I think, a great thing to say. As in, hey, I'm still with you. You'll still have input, but
go hide.
we're gonna pretend that I'm working with the girls, which is a perfect cover for her to actually go and then bond with the girls this week.
Yes, and it's a gift to Ty, because Ty can, Ty doesn't need anything on him. I feel like if he's a self-interested player, he should take this and run with it. But also still, yeah, think about that. You know, you're giving Kuzi a free pass to socialize with the girls here.
She says, I'll run it by you if anything changes, but I'm pretty locked in on the plan. If the veto is used, I might have to change things. So implying her nominations are going to include her target. He asks, so are you focused on Santina? And she says, yes. She asks, well, would Santina leaving hurt your game? And he says, well, I do think that Santina would do what I tell her to do. So it would depend on who she's sitting beside. Is it going to be Vanessa? And Kuzi says, yes. He says, well, I would want Vanessa to go over Santina. And Kuzi's like, well, I wouldn't want to put Santina up and not have her go home. And Ty's like, no, don't worry about that. I could smooth it over easy. Santina would not go after you if I told her not to. So this is where things get a little concerning.
Yes.
Kuzi's plan so far, we'll talk about the the rest of the plan, but so far the plan is Vanessa and Santina on the block with Santina as the target. Santina leaving is obviously not Dan leaving, but it's not as bad, I think, as many other plans, especially because Ty feels very confident that he has Santina, which might actually be the case. Because if Ty has Santina, then taking out Santina weakens Ty, and that's great, especially if she can do it without pissing Ty off too much. And so Santina leaving, not the worst thing for Kuzi. It's, I still think Dan is a slightly better play, but what are you going to do? The problem is Vanessa going on the block leaves you so vulnerable to a very, very, very bad situation, which is Vanessa leaving and Santina staying, especially after you've taken the shot at Santina. That could completely devastate your game. In fact, if I'm thinking about all of the players in the house and I'm thinking about like who would be the worst person for Kuzi to target aside from Anika or Daniel, I think Vanessa is actually there at the very top of the list. Vanessa is the last person she should be taking a shot at right now because Ty and Zach are so caught up, with her.
Perfect. Let them be caught up. Yeah,
exactly. That's a conflict in the house that needs to remain a conflict in the house. And it like how does Jonathan feel, right? When Vanessa goes on the block, is that going to hinder your building with Jonathan? Or does Jonathan eventually come around to agreeing with the boys again and take out Santina? Like when Santina goes up, she's not going to be pleased. And if she stays again, like if she is working with Jonathan, like, or whatever the case may be, if she works with Ty and like now Ty has all of the leverage over you where you're completely relying on Ty to keep you safe from Santina. And that's not a good place to be. Not to mention the fact that Santina being on the block next to Vanessa means that the boys, Zach and Ty, will be campaigning for Santina, which will probably repair any relationship problems between them. And she will probably be back with them at the end of the week if Santina stays. And then losing Vanessa in the first place, like, again, like that conflict, great. But she's also kind of a lone wolf in this game. She doesn't really have a lot of people. And she's somebody that Kuzi actually does have a decent relationship with and could easily work with moving forward or even in the late game. It's just, I do not like this at all. I think she sees Vanessa as an easy pawn to put up on the block that wouldn't piss anybody off. But man, you are leaving yourself so vulnerable to a worst case scenario. And it's very concerning, especially because Ty is not afraid of, even in this conversation, being like, yeah, I'm basically going to be campaigning for Vanessa to go.
That is, again, that's like the worst case scenario, right? Because we've seen these uncut DRs. A lot of people do not really trust Santina. Santina has the link to the boys. Santina's an easy sell. And while not as ideal as, let's say, a Dan, is kind of a great moment to step up, get HOH, get out someone that most people were kind of like iffy on anyway, move on to the next week, solidify more bonds. You've not taken someone out from the boys' side. You've taken out someone that Ty claims is in his pocket, bringing Ty a little bit closer to you. Win on all fronts. Vanessa is taking out someone who's kind of on an island, doesn't really impact you at all. And I don't love that. And I feel like given the way we saw the feeds open up, the dailies open up with that fight with her and Ty, we've seen the stuff with her and Zach. I think they're going to push Vanessa out so quickly. and that would make this a dud HOH, which I'm not here for. I would love for Vanessa, because Vanessa being there is just a foil to the boys, and that's perfect. That's a place to be, because again, Kuzi should never be looking to take out Zach, but taking out someone that could be in Zach's corner is an A++ move right now. So Vanessa would be a huge mistake, and I think that's what Taran was alluding to. The Bel Air Direct, if Vanessa's the one to be safe, we're guaranteed something to go off here. Am I confident that Vanessa would get the votes? Not even a little bit. Given that we don't get the drop till, what, noon today, and people have been voting since the episode last night, and again, Big Jonathan from The Rock from Newfoundland, I think the vote's already settled.
Yeah.
But vote for Vanessa if you're going to vote.
I would say so. Yeah, unfortunately, the only thing worse than an HOH where you take out an ally or a potential ally on the bidding of somebody else is a failed HOH.
Yes.
Taking a shot and missing is the worst thing that can happen to you as an HOH, because you are finding yourself on the other side of a majority, having just been publicly weakened, and you can't even compete. Many a player has found themselves heading right out the door right after something like that. So definitely something to be very cautious of. And now she could of course pivot and turn it into doing taking out a potential ally on the bidding of somebody else by just agreeing with it when the numbers go in that direction. But that's still a very bad HOH. So that's the plan right now. Ty then brings up, well, what about Dan? I'm like, yeah, listen to Ty. He's making a mistake. She says she plans to put Dan up if anything happens with the veto. She's like, oh, like a backdoor. She's not really like a backdoor. Like, it sounds like a backdoor. It's more of a backup. More of a backup. He's not the plan, but if something happens with the veto, then he would be the plan at that point. She says, my thing with Santina is that for Ty, for you, she's great, but for me, she doesn't help my game at all. And Ty says, well, don't worry about her. She can't take you out without numbers. She won't have those numbers. And Kuzi's, yeah, but at this point, Santina's the person that offends the crowd the least if she goes home. After Santina, the person that offends the crowd the least is Zach as the public enemy, but I don't want to do that. Ty says, well, again, like, what about Dan and Vanessa instead of Santina and Vanessa? And she says, no way. Dan will win that veto. And plus, I don't want it to look like you have anything to do with it, right? And he's like, yeah, that's a good point. And, Dan knows I have a good relationship with you, but you can act like I'm not, like, you're not telling me much. I can come out of this conversation and be like, oh, she didn't tell me anything. She's like, he's going to win that veto. So, okay. Santina and Vanessa. She says, who is the person you absolutely would never want to touch the block? Zach, right? She's like, yes, Zach. She says, I wouldn't mind Dan being gone because he's the only person that can compete with me physically. So at that point, Zach comes in. They'd start talking about other things. So that's the plan for Kuzi. And this is actually, like, this backup plan makes things a little more palatable because, A, there's a chance that Ty might actually prefer Dan to go over even Vanessa. And if he or Zach or Hope or somebody that he can control wins the veto, he might push for it to be used so that Dan goes on the block and kind of push Kuzi into making a decent move. Right.
Yeah.
Or somebody could just straight up win the veto and Dan could go up. And if Dan's up next to Vanessa, again, they might want to vote Dan out. And then, like, kind of best case scenario almost would be Vanessa winning the veto and then taking herself off. Maybe Dan goes up, although it's not really best case scenario because now Dan's on the block next to Santina and only one of them can leave. But either way, it's not quite as bad given the backup plan is pretty decent. If the backup plan was like something else, then it would be really scary. But there are some outs here.
There are. Now, quick question, Taran. Is there anybody who would, if the picked for the veto, win it and use it on Vanessa?
I mean, maybe John, but it's hard to know where he actually stands with Vanessa. We know they worked together to keep Rob, but she's denying that she voted to keep Rob, which is weird. And I've like, I don't think I've ever really seen them talk. So I don't actually know what their relationship is. If I mean, again, if we go to like the diary rooms, Jonathan said he trusted Rob the most, didn't really mention Vanessa. Vanessa said she trusted Jonathan the most, but again, I just don't know how Jonathan feels about her.
Yeah, big question mark for me there as well, because that's my biggest worry, right? Is if Vanessa touches the block, all the things you've just highlighted could happen. The backup going up could further solidify that, yeah, Dan gets the push out over Vanessa. But I just have a tough time seeing that happening because I don't know how Vanessa's going to feel about being on the block. Vanessa already was talking about how she's kind of lost her patience with some of this stuff in the game. Is there going to be any problems, any bad conversation? There's a lot of things that can happen between being initially nommed and eviction day, which makes me worried because I don't know how the game's going to be treating Vanessa and how the house is going to be treating Vanessa. She might have a tough time with it. So,
yeah, I mean, not to mention the fact that like just Vanessa going on the block in the first place damages the relationship between Kuzi and Vanessa probably
and
pretty significantly.
Might as well lose it. It's fine, whatever. Oh God. Okay. All right. We'll see. I mean, you can still vote for the Bel-Air Direct. That's a thing. We'll see. Yeah, I don't know. Oh God.
So Zach joins Kuzi and Ty, and he goes, "Did we figure it out?" I swear it wasn't me. I did not cast the vote. It really wasn't me. I honestly, I really can't figure it out. Kuzi, why are you looking at me like that? I swear to you, it wasn't me. She's like, I'm not looking at you like anything. I'm just smiling at you. I'm glad you're here. He's like, no. You've never looked at me like before. It wasn't me. I swear. Ty says, I think it was Vanessa and Hope. And Zach says, yeah, I didn't want to say Hope, but that does make the most sense. So small hint to me that maybe Zach knew is that he didn't say Hope right out. And then he was trying to be like, who could it have been? And then once he sees that people are like, it's probably Hope, he's like, yeah, I didn't want to say, but it probably does make the most sense, which reads to me like somebody who knew it was Hope, didn't want people to know it was Hope, and is accepting that people know it's Hope. But again, it's all obviously like very easily could not be that way either. Like it could also just genuinely be that he didn't know.
Yeah, these are the ups and downs of not knowing the full info. We might never know. And I don't know. We could either give him that credit or we can keep that credit away from him. And we'll see. We'll see where that goes. Now, Taran, I have not listened to the recap from last night yet. I wasn't able to get to it. I'm assuming you talked about and you've given your takes out to the world about everyone seeing who's on the leaderboard for this goddamn Wendy's nonsense. We're irritated, right? We don't like that. And now they know how to get all the points. And now they know Kuzi won another bit of points. That's not good, right?
Yeah, I didn't like that. I didn't like that at all.
Same. Okay. Just glad we're on the same page.
Yeah. I assume, I didn't ask Rob, but I assume that he gave his points to Jonathan.
He did give them to Jonathan in the, So I've been watching the TikTok interviews and he mentioned it there that he gave them to, he's going to give them to Jonathan. Yeah.
So, and I don't think that will surprise anyone. So I don't think it's like a huge deal for this time, but in general, I mean, like having secret relationships with people, especially if they're the people that were like on the outs on the way out the door, is like a huge part of the game. And when it's exposed like that, like that's kind of sucks.
Yeah, I wish people would realize they can game it. So if Vanessa goes out, I'm gonna give them to Zach.
Right.
Put some little distrust in the house. I'm gonna give them to Zach.
That might be a little too obvious. It might be a little.
You got to go somewhere middle, somewhere else. Yeah.
It's like Ty. Ty would be a good one to give it to because if everyone starts giving their points to Ty, you'd start to realize. But the problem is that they don't realize that they don't know to do it to Ty.
Exactly.
All right. The only other thing we got was Santina and Hope again having a little conversation. She thinks Kuzi will make good choices, good decisions with her HOH. You say that now. Hope says he really hopes he plays in the veto. And she says, oh, me too, but not if it means being on the block. And he's like, well,
that'd be ideal.
So look, I just want to be in the veto regardless. I don't know about you. They start talking a little bit about like, so what was the issue between us? And then she goes into like, oh, I was just being weird last week because it was a weird situation, blah, blah, blah. Nothing too interesting.
Yeah.
And that's it.
That's it. That's all we got. I mean, the last scene in the daily was the house guests all being in the living room. And there was a little bit of a back and forth flirtation with Shania and Dan. You give me feet rubs. No, I'm not going to do that. I need something in return. Well, tell her what you want in return. I would like a back rub. I don't have good hands for back rubs. Well, I don't have good hands for foot rubs. And this is happening in front of like a couple people. So maybe that idea that the doors are a little bit more open for that flirtation is something, but will it have any impact in the game this week? We'll find out if Dan gets put up.
Yeah, there were a couple of Dan Shania moments. There were even there was a couple of moments before as well, indicating that even though Dan was not exactly Shania's first choice, she is entertaining, I think, the flirtation from Dan at this point. And I don't think we'll ever know if this entirely came from Dan or if it came from a rumor that turned real. Who knows?
Listen, Dan is the backup showman's choice and the backup nominee choice. So Dan Zabo, big backup energy.
There it is. That's the other thing with Dan too, is that even if he does jump ship from Zach and Ty, like he's jumping ship probably to Shania, Renee, and Claudia, which also contains Ty to a degree, and is still like not with you, right? So just think that he's a good target here for Kuzi. But that's about what we've got from today's drop. Lots of info from those diary rooms, and then we got some plans for the week so far. Last week we got an additional drop for the Friday content, and we got that on Saturday. I don't know if that will occur again this week, but it's possible. We are waiting until Monday to find out who actually goes on the block, and then additionally what happens with the veto. Although I don't think we actually even learned who went on the block last week. I think the nominations hadn't even happened yet. Because we learned who went on the block on Monday. So I don't think that would matter anyway. It's honestly useless content. They don't show who goes on the block, but what are you gonna do?
Taran, can I break some news for you?
Sure.
Okay, so the bbcan Twitter account tweeted, speaking of useless content, get ready with a bbcan 11 house guest. Click below to vote for the house guest whose morning routine you want to see. The house guest will be selected based on their total number of votes. So scroll through to find your favorite player. And then Gap, sponsored by Philips Sonicare. So if you would like to see someone's morning routine, you have time to vote for that. Who would you like to see getting ready in the morning and brushing their teeth? bbcan giving you that content, Taran. Come on.
I literally made a joke about this last night, about how they would start charging microtransactions for individual players following them around on the feeds.
Oh my God. Yeah, I wonder who has the most votes. Not that this matters, but I'm going to do some votes to see. All right, Daniel C has the most votes here. Kuzi and Santina and Vanessa. Interesting. Vanessa has a lot of votes. So it's weird because you can't put all the house guests in one poll, so they got to do them in separate tweets. They've put Vanessa, Ty, and Zach in the same tweet, so obviously Vanessa's got the most there. What am I doing? Why am I reporting this? Back to the plugs, Taran. Let's get out of here. What are we doing here? Yeah.
All right. Well, tune in potentially tomorrow for an update. And if not, we will see you Monday, hopefully at around this time. Last Monday, it was a bit off. So we'll see about that as well. We will have another roundtable on Monday also. So that should be an interesting time. Survivor Stock Watch will be tomorrow. So you can check that out. You can find me on Twitch, as always, twitch.tv/Taran Armstrong, hanging out, playing some games, watching these shows live with all of you, because let's face it, they're not always super fun, but they're made more fun when we watch it together. So check all of that out. Find me on Twitter at Armstrong Taran. Pooya, what do you got going on?
Well, you can first and foremost find me on Twitter at Pooyaism. Don't worry, no morning routine polls coming your way from my Twitter. You can find me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Pooya. I will be very busy this weekend, 10 p.m. tonight, 5 p.m. tomorrow, and Sunday with our regular Goose Goose Duck content. So come through, say hi, would appreciate it. As far as podcasts go, 90 Day Fiance, I had Sasha on this week, Masked Singer, Liana and I have fun there as always. And Chappelle and I just recorded Bel Air Season 2, Episode 4 on post-show recap, so you can check that out as well. And last but not least, I've been working on a little side project over on my YouTube, youtube.com/Pooyaism, if you're interested, check that out.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us here today. And of course, also check out the exit interview I did with Rob that will be dropping at some point today. I thought it was pretty fun. We talked a lot about sweaters. And
Nice.
I let him know about all of the sweater content. So it's a fun time. Check it out. And I will see all of you next time.